This summer, my daughter Rachel shared with me one of her favorite books, Looking for Alaska by John Green. It is a simultaneously beautiful and heartbreaking story of adolescence, suffering, life, death, friendship, and love. In the book, one of the main characters, a young woman named Alaska, shares the last words spoken by Simón Bolívar, a South American Revolutionary War hero who said, "How will I ever get out of this labyrinth?" In pondering this statement, Alaska believes that what Bolívar meant by the labyrinth was doing wrong and having wrong things happen to you. That's the problem. Bolívar was talking about the pain. Alaska calls this the labyrinth of suffering, and later concludes that the most important question facing people is, how will we ever get out of this labyrinth of suffering? Alaska suffered in this story, as did many of the characters, as have so many of us, especially in these recent and difficult times. Well, I'm not sure that Alaska's question would be my most important question. It's certainly relevant for many of us. We go through our lives that contain rejoicing on so many levels, but also contain suffering because of the very nature of what makes us alive. We are mortal, fallible beings living on a precious, vulnerable planet in a precarious and confusing time. Songwriter Michael Franti recently wrote a song that says, "Nobody gets out pain-free. Nobody doesn't get lonely. I used to think that I was the only one, but nobody doesn't get a broken heart. Nobody doesn't need a brand new start. Everybody cries on a shoulder sometimes. That's how life reminds us we are alive." For Alaska, in her terms, we all do wrong things and wrong things happen to all of us. And these things hurt and take us into the labyrinth of suffering. I looked into the definition and the history of labyrinths. They are defined as a complicated, irregular network of passages or paths in which it is difficult to find one's way. Labyrinths have been found dating as far back as the 1800s BCE, and their existence has spanned cultures and continents ever since. They may have been developed originally to trap imagined dark spirits, and more recently have come to represent transformational journeys. Today, many people walk labyrinths as a contemplative practice to quiet their minds, wandering in non-directional time and space. One article I read suggested how to use a labyrinth for contemplative practice. Enter the labyrinth slowly, calming and clearing your mind. This may be done by repeating a prayer or a chant. Open your senses and focus on the process of taking slow and deliberate steps. And so if we use these instructions and apply them to answering Alaska's question, how will I ever get out of this labyrinth of suffering? We should then move slowly and calmly, try to clear our minds, pray and chant, open to what is heard and felt and seen and smelled and tasted, and take it slow and take deliberate steps. And then the way through the labyrinth of suffering will be to walk through. One foot in front of the other, one breath, one waking, one meal, one blessing, one kindness, one hug, one prayer after another. Yom Kippur is our holiest day. The Torah says about this day, "Anitem nafshotechem," you shall afflict your souls. The Torah continues, every soul who does not afflict themselves on this day will be cut off from his or her people. On our holiest day, we are to intentionally afflict ourselves, to dedicate an entire day to being with suffering, and to do so as a community. And so we fast a complete fast as we are able. We wear simple, unadorned clothing. We contemplate the fragility of our lives. We look hard and long at who we are and where we have been. And we move through this hard day of intentional affliction, each one of us, each in our own way, and together. The Torah says we don't have a choice but to move through this day, that if we didn't move through, we could never reach the other side. We would be stuck on this side. And we don't want to be stuck. The Torah says that the point is not to be stuck, but to continue onward and through and over. On Rosh Hashanah, it is written. On Yom Kippur, it is sealed. On Rosh Hashanah, the gates are said to open. Tomorrow night, at the close of Yom Kippur, the gates are said to close. This day of ritualized walking through, of the final day of ritualized walking through of this transitional time given to us between one year and the next. We are meant to walk through this day. The path was set before us so that we could walk through. And awaiting us on the other side, in addition to our break-fast meal, is a sukkah to build, in which to bless for bread with the guests we have welcomed, a festival for which we are commanded to be joyous. Mitzvot, commandments, are waiting for us to complete. The world is waiting for our good deeds and our joy on the other side of today. Judaism, in its ever astonishing wisdom, understands, affirms, and calls us to the fact that we are a people who move through. Every year in the Torah, and again when we celebrate Passover, we read of our people's redemption from slavery to freedom. And what was the final step? Our crossing through the sea of reeds. Twice daily in our prayers, we recall this moment of crossing with the Mi Chamocha, the song of the sea. Crossing a sea. How does one even cross a sea? It seemed impossible to our biblical ancestors. It seems impossible to me, and yet they did it with a little help from a big and powerful friend. Our tradition makes sure that we never forget that our ancestors crossed the sea, that we are to internalize this story as if it was our own, as if it were we who, it had happened in our lifetime. It was us who was redeemed. We were the ones who crossed the sea. And today we are crossing the sea of Yom Kippur. And beyond this day, we will have so many other great crossings before us, because life is a series of crossings, is it not? We are the Hebrew people, Ha-Ivrim. The root of this word that is one of our primary names as a people is Ayin Vet Resh. And this root means to cross over. We are the people that cross over. We cross the Sea of Reeds and then the Jordan River into the land, Eretz Yisrael. We have crossed and crossed again and again every day, every year, and throughout history. There is a powerful book called Healing Through the Dark Emotions. Note, this title says healing through because we have to move through to heal. The author, Miriam Greenspan, writes, "We must be willing to accept suffering and vulnerability as a normal part of life because we are vulnerable. Life hurts. We are not here to be free of pain. We are here to have our hearts broken by life, to learn to live with vulnerability and to turn pain into love. The world breaks our hearts wide open, and it is the openness itself that makes us whole." And here we are today on Yom Kippur, where we knock on our hearts so that they might open, so that we may fully feel and wake up and know our aliveness and all that it means, all the ways life is messy and gorgeous, so that we can emerge through this day whole. Many years ago, I went through a time of many losses clustered together at once. And a dear someone shared with me the book, Mourning as Mitzvah. This book helped me to accept the journey of mourning as a necessary step towards healing. It taught that in Judaism, mourning is essential. It is, in fact, a mitzvah, a commandment, a good deed. Time and space is thus prescribed in Judaism to allow one to mourn. We bring the community home to the house of mourning for the first 7 days so the mourners can pray at home, because leaving home could pull them out of their full mourning, and we must mourn fully. And we mourn in stages, gradually finding our way back to the fullness of our lives, because not finding our way back is also not an option. We must not get stuck in our mourning. We must keep walking through that labyrinth. Judaism teaches when we move through our suffering, we engage in honoring it with our full presence. We give it time, and we also don't give it too much time. The labyrinth is not endless, and it is not a dead end. We walk in, and then we walk out. Marcel Proust says, "One heals suffering only by experiencing it to the full." There is no fast forward button to press, or tunnel to take us under, or bridge to take us over. The only way through is through, and moving through gets us to the other side. A physical labyrinth that I've come to love is located in the hills just above Ashland, the one at Earth Teach. It sits on a mountaintop, nestled amidst oak trees, with a view of the surrounding mountains. This lovely labyrinth twists and turns, beginning and ending with a large rock, where visitors leave gifts and treasures, crystals, pine cones, acorns, seashells, buttons, earrings, thank yous for the going throughs. When I travel to Israel, people give me notes to put in the Wailing Wall, prayers, and tzedakah to donate upon my arrival. Find a good charity, one woman said to me, and all will be safe and good for you. Both of these things, these prayer notes, these donations, represent something essential on the other side of the journey awaiting my arrival. And it isn't about me, but it will become a part of my getting through. It's not unlike that rock of thank you offerings at Earth Teach. It's not unlike Sukkot that begins next week. Pirkei Avot teaches, Lo alecha hamlecha ligmor, velo ata ven chorin livatel mimena. It is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. This core teaching is one of resilience. As a people, not only do we recall our crossings every day and every year, not only do we enact our crossings as we are today on this day of affliction, not only do we give time and attention necessary for our crossings with the 10 days to fully step into a new year, and the 7 days, and then 30 days, then 11 months, and then every year at appointed times, we mourn. Not only do we ensure that there are mitzvot, commandments awaiting completion on the other side of our crossings with our prayers, our tzedakah, our Sukkot celebrations. We don't give up, and we don't stop trying to accomplish that which we have set out to do. And is this not what we are seeing in our larger Southern Oregon community as friends and neighbors return at last to their rebuilt homes that burned in Talent during the Almeda fire 1 year ago? Bit by bit, our community is being rebuilt because that is what communities do. On this Yom Kippur day, we will move through this day. We will know hunger, thirst, vulnerability. We will contemplate our mortality. We will ask big questions. We will see with our open eyes and feel with our open hearts. And then we will have crossed over and through. And the shofar will blast one more time, calling us into joy. And we will have crossed one more sea. We will have moved through, and we will take this knowing to the crossings that await us in the year to come. And if by chance we forget, we will sing the song of the sea. We will celebrate Passover. We will cross over and through again and again, symbolically and then actually, because that is what we do. We are ha-ivrim, the ones who cross over. I wish us all a strong and resilient crossing into this new year, knowing that moving through is what we are made to do, that we are needed on the other side of all that each of us is walking through, and that we are not alone. Breath by breath, step by step, kindness by kindness, toward healing, wholeness, and new beginnings. Here we go. Gamar Chatima Tova.